Snapping 1, 2, where are you?
5, Chapter 231. The notice requirements have been satisfied. The meeting dates of the year are confirmed that the annual meeting are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Salute to the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Omar, could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Corsair?
Present.
Councilmember Minna?
Here.
Councilmember Michaels?
Yes.
Councilmember Dr. O'Connor?
Here.
Councilmember Parr?
Here.
Councilmember Rolari?
Here.
Mayor Zetter?
Here. Before we get started, I just want to do a shout out, thank you to the Knickerbocker Country Club and Councilman Rolieri for making arrangements for a golf cart that the Knickerbocker Country Club donated to the borough of Tenafly for use by the Recreation Department. We picked that up when? When did we pick it up? Friday? We picked it up Friday, and
I did get a call from the police.
Yes.
It was a strange.
there were two knuckleheads driving through town on a golf cart. And his wife was escorting us. She was behind us for safety. Then she got tired, went around us, and left. But thank you. That was good work, Councilman. All right. To be considered, the 2024 League of Municipalities Conference.
Sure. So I was informed by the League of Municipalities that registration is going to be open on August 1st. Actually, housing is now open for the League of Municipalities. So any council member who is interested in attending the league, which will be from November 19th through the 21st, please let me know and set you up in reservations for your hotel and also register you for classes in the league.
Okay, thank you, Omar. Okay, next on the agenda, the Clinton Inn redevelopment. Jeff, would you be so kind as to, Jeff Zen, planning board attorney, is here. He's going to, we're going to do a Q&A in the Clinton Inn redevelopment, which everyone has copies of that agreement. And then since he's here, we'll beg his indulgence because we'll be potentially voting on it later in the evening. Any questions you might have for Jeff about the garage ordinance that has come back from the planning board where the council wanted. So Jeff, would you like to give us a little summary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to summarize the redevelopment agreement terms. And first, if everyone has it, I'm going to just recite some key timelines because we've been working on this for several years, probably going back to 2018. But in 2019, Council had authorized the planning board to conduct a study as to whether this area, which is in need, was in need of redevelopment. Specifically, it's the Clinton Inn property and the property south of that. The planning board undertook that study in February 2020 and recommended to the council that the area met the qualifications as an area in need of redevelopment. In March of 2020, the council accepted that recommendation and agreed that, in fact, designated the area as an area in need of redevelopment, and then set about prepared a redevelopment plan and sent it back to the planning board. In July 2022, the council adopted the redevelopment plan for this property, which generally consisted of a rehab of the Clinton Inn Hotel and an assisted living facility to the south of that property. This redevelopment agreement now is the culmination of that document that would agree where the borough would enter into with the redeveloper for the construction of the redevelopment. And specifically, if you want to follow with me, it requires the complete renovation of the hotel and the construction of a new assisted living facility. In section 2.01, we have some specific requirements. While the borough is not attempting to micromanage anyone's business or to tell people specifically what they must do or what they must not do, in terms of the renovation of the hotel, there are some specific items that we wanted to put a little detail on it rather than just leave it to a complete renovation and leave it as anyone's surmise as to what that might be. The hotel is to be renovated with no less than 125 rooms. The exterior is to be consistent with the concept plan that was shown on the redevelopment plan that was presented to you back in 2022. Your interior renovations within each guest room include new flooring, new wall coverings, beds, linens, furniture, bathrooms updated with new bathroom fixtures, bathtubs shall be replaced. Common areas of the hotel, as well as amenity spaces, including lobbies, hallways, banquet facilities, and fitness center, shall be renovated with new flooring, wall coverings, furniture, and lighting. They must have a banquet facility that shall accommodate up to 500 seats with a fully functioning catering kitchen, including associated equipment and systems. In addition, the assisted living facility would be an approximately 145-bed brand-new building with 10% of the units set aside as affordable, essentially Medicaid beds, with no less than 11 of the beds affordable. So even if they went down below 145, if they went to 100 units, 11 would be affordable. That's generally the project. Section 2.02, we have the timing of it, but one thing is very clear, and that's at the end of section 2.01. While the project may be developed in phases at the redeveloper's option and convenience, unless all the phase one work, and phase one is the hotel, unless all that work is completed and ready for occupancy as evidenced by a certificate of occupancy, phase two cannot get a certificate of occupancy, meaning the hotel must be renovated completely and in full before the redeveloper gets the assisted living facility. That's generally the general terms and outline of this. Obviously, this is a very long document, but typical of a redevelopment agreement. And I'm happy to go into more detail or answer any questions you have. But that's the general outline of what we have here.
Thank you, Jeff. Who has questions?
Question regarding, I think it's a common question, but question regarding what amenities are going to be made available to residents regarding restaurants, spas, anything. What is the uplift? It seems reference is made to a courtyard by Marriott, which doesn't seem consistent with our community. And so, is there an opportunity to make this into something that would be, special for the town?
Well, in terms of, there will be amenities as part of the hotel, but those are things that the hotel will have as part of their hotel. I mean, they won't be open to the public for residents to come and use.
I think that was part of the discussions that we had at the beginning, which was, for us, I'll speak for myself, I wanted it to be for the 15,500 residents that we have in town. So I think we spent a lot of time, please, those who are on the council, please. But I remember we had multiple conversations around, again, they might be.
No, there were.
I wasn't on the council, but I do remember seeing mock-ups of rooftop bars and restaurants and stuff like that. I do remember that in June approaching.
There were discussions about that, but they never made it into the ultimate redevelopment plan. So things were never set aside for the borough. I will say there are certain things in the redevelopment plan for the borough's benefit, and that is there are road improvements, drainage improvements, and the intersection of Clinton and
Dean.
Dean, excuse me, I was lacking my bit. And contributions to the traffic signalization there.
And when you said they didn't make it into the plan, is that because they chose not to include it in the plan, or, well, I know we specifically asked for it, so why wouldn't it have been in the redevelopment?
That was part of the ultimate negotiation back when the plan was adopted.
That's why we're discussing this. Not voting tonight. So
I guess what is our traditionally, stuff that comes to the planning board is for us to,
So the plan was adopted by the council, not the planning, board, just to
Okay.
point that out.
so can we go back and change stuff in this redevelopment plan, or is it pretty much an up or down vote as is?
So you could amend the redevelopment plan the way you amend any other zoning plan. But keeping in mind that it was negotiated with the designated redeveloper and any amendments may then make the project fail. Depending, and I'm not saying it will or not, it's just, this is how it was negotiated.
But who negotiated on our side?
It came to you all.
Redevelop the agreement originally.
Correct, who,
The plan was done at the council. I mean, it was
No, but-
negotiated and then brought to the council for approval. So at some point you all were.
well, we definitely said we want this stuff for the community.
It would have, from what I remember, and I wasn't here when it started, but from what I remember, there was presentations made to the council and then direction was given back, amendments were made before it was ever introduced, and it was introduced and adopted. What happened in the background, I'm sure I can't really tell you. Jeff may be able to have more recollection of that. But
No,
Well, that doesn't mean doesn't mean we're prohibited from saying, hey, we've read the plan as it is as of today, we'd like to add X.
Personally, it's the last time. So for me personally, the plan as is, and go to the extreme worst case scenario. The plan as is state of the art, most amazing hotel in the entire world that is completely closed off to everybody but hotel guests. I'm going to the extreme point. For me, when I supported the plan, it was because we had multiple discussions around, again, there's a nice restaurant there that I can take my spouse on a Friday night. There, we had a very clear discussion on, again, this has to resonate with you guys. We had a very clear discussion on the coolest place in the entire world in Tenafly right now is, outside the CDS, right? Outside CDS. And we specifically said how great it would be if the kids could go to a video arcade on the bottom. Again, I know that this is the hotel property, and of course, the primary focus should be on the hotel guests, but to me, this as is does not ensure any benefit to the 15,500 residents that we represent.
Jeff, in this agreement, you reference the blueprints and the plans.
Yep.
Right, and so I don't recall them all details off the top of my head, but wasn't there going to be like a rooftop bar?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
was not on
Yes.
council,
Right,
and I was encouraged to come to a council meeting.
right, so,
Yes.
right, so my point is though, when it makes reference to those plans, all that's still in the plans.
Correct.
So we need to take a look at
And
those
again, to
plans.
be clear, I'm super supportive of this. I was supportive the first time. I'm still supportive of it. I want to make sure our 15,500 residents are.
Yes. I think to your point though, I think we presented twice on the redevelopment plan when the developer was here. They pushed back, they didn't want to have be committed to a restaurant. They've had a failed restaurant there. I think that was their concern. But to your point though, the borough does get some benefits, as I talked about, the street improvements, drainage improvements, traffic improvements. But you also have right now a failing hotel that's going to be renovated and hopefully now make
Hotel
your
tax.
downtown area, your gateway, a lot nicer than what it is currently.
I think that's part of the point, right? I mean, one of the reasons you have a building hotel is that it has no amenity attractions, right? And so it has no current amenities or attractions, right? Resident dollars being spent in a downstairs restaurant or arcade or a rooftop bar or something else are accretive to that overall property and its sustenance. I think that's one of the key points, is that we make sure it's something that can survive, because not just hotel guests want to go there. And you're right to point out that there are infrastructure improvements, but I think we're also interested in lifestyle improvements for the residents, and I think that's an important thing. My other question earlier was, reference is made to a 3-star Marriott courtyard, which also doesn't seem particularly consistent with the town necessarily itself. So I'm curious if there's room in that or discussion in that or what that means, because there was reference in the document to an appendix that would show the blueprints that was not included. So I have no visibility into what this looks like, so it's very difficult to understand.
So we do have the concept plans and I'm happy to share.
Can we
with you.
share them? I know
I said it was in there.
phase 2, appendix 2 and appendix 3 were not part of the
let's keep going with questions, okay?
No, that's it, otherwise, I'm all for it.
So we do have those, and I'm happy to just share those with you, of course.
Hey, go ahead, Manu, please.
Yeah, so I know you referenced 145 beds. Any idea of how that translates into rooms, numbers of rooms?
I do not. I do not know how many, whether it's just one-to-one or not.
Mhm.
And just to be clear, it's important that we do it. So it's a good project for sure. No doubt that we need to do this. It's just important that I don't think we plan on doing it twice.
Other questions? So kind of the three main takeaways for Jeff are, first thing is we're gonna make the blueprints available for all the council members. So Omar, let's get those available and they'll be in either your office or David's office for the council to come in at their leisure this coming week and take a look, okay, to see what's going on with different amenities, since that's what we're referring to. And then Jeff, we have the amenities question. In other words, is there room to do some fun community stuff in there that would benefit the community? And then the whole issue of the 3 stars. So those are really the two to go back with, as I understand
So
it, to the
let
development.
me,
Go ahead.
let me also address the 3-star and why that came up. So we were negotiating and discussing the renovation of the hotel. And I felt like it wasn't enough to say the renovation of the hotel, because that means different things to different people. Could be so that's why I said, okay, let's put some meat on the bone. New beds, new linens, new wall coverings, new floor coverings, bathrooms, in the rooms, in the lobbies. And then other people felt, okay, that's good. We have that, and they wanted a little higher level of comfort as to, well, what are you comparing that to? Like, what level of renovation is that? So that's when the redeveloper, I believe, offered a 3-star hotel, and there are, ratings for hotels, and it's again a little bit of a, hard to tell exactly what the definitions, is a definition, but it's hard to pinpoint it, and that's why we then added, so we know what a 3-star hotel we're talking about is. So if you're looking at a newly renovated courtyard, that level of quality. So that's why, I don't know if you were ever at, we asked the question about how did that get in there. That's how it is actually more as a feeling of a comfort level.
Everyone good with that?
So it wasn't meant to say this is going to be a courtyard, but just a level of
But
quality.
there is a degree of purpose.
No, it's his point, right? It's one of he's trying to put something around it and throw it off just to a point. Like, it'll be in the plans. It'll be good to see the plans. That's what we're missing, is to see what everything looks like. What we're missing is what the mayor suggested, is that we get a look at the plans.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, then that'll tell us all.
And the plans really are elevation. I mean, I think they're maybe not.
I've seen the plans in the past, it's more.
It's not like a mock-up of what.
No,
Yeah,
it's more
it's
architectural.
building elevations, height, they may need a preliminary site plan access in and out.
But it's not appointments. It's not the appointments.
No, that's, back in 2022, they weren't there, in 2024, they're not there yet, that's level of detail. And Omar, I believe I sent you a red line with all the exhibits attached, I think, on Monday. So that will have the elevations and the plans.
So the next step with this, after everyone kind of does their looking at the plans, and Jeff goes back to the developer about the 2 questions the council has. We'll put this on the agenda for the meeting in July to continue the conversation.
Don't you think it's important to kind of revisit the stuff that was presented to everybody back in the day when everyone started this, and kind of give those plans that were presented to everybody in town plan, kind of work that into what you present, what we decided. Final.
We just have to be careful, I don't think, we don't want to go backward, right?
Right.
Back, because we've been working on this about 850 years.
Right.
And we need it.
I do, right, and we do need it. I think, obviously, we should share everything that we've done. I think it's just more about, I don't think we should be talking about the new stuff as much as hold to the stuff that 2 years ago.
That's what we're gonna do.
That was, the top said.
But when you see the plans, you'll see
That's
elevations.
all, just do what you said you would do.
And those elevations are included in here. This is what the building should generally look like.
Right.
And in particular, you'll see a very nice, sort of modern looking hotel exterior, rooftop, I forgot there's a rooftop. And those are incorporated into the redevelopment plan, into the redevelopment agreement.
They still have a liquor license, right?
Go ahead.
There's the ability for a liquor license with a hotel with more than 100 rooms. That's legal.
Apart from the ones, the normal
It
ones.
is not the same as a retail consumption license. It's specific to hotels of a certain size. So they would likely be able to get one, yes.
But they have one now.
Oh,
I think it's still, they're still
They still
holding on to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so good with that? All right, so Jeff, next topic. Let's go on to the, see if any council members have questions about the garage ordinance that, excuse me,
Yes,
wrong, we already passed that one. That's
Yeah.
not- The overnight parking ordinance. Julie?
Yes. Okay. Hi, Jeff, how are you?
Covered that already.
Sounds like you're on the stand.
I was reading, how you doing? So I was reading the ordinance, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on a couple of things. So it says the developer pays $10,000 per parking spot. And that, I just want to confirm, that's a one-off, right? So then if that property got sold to another person, does the town get another 10,000? Or is that that's just, was Bill, developer, paid this certain amount of 10,000s for that spot? That's the one-off.
For that building. And
For that building, one shot.
Well, I believe it sunsets after 20 years. So there'll be another,
Oh, in 20 years?
yes, I believe that's the renewal.
And then,
And that means, oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say that, and that means that at that time, the amount could be different
Yes,
from the 10,000. It could be
correct,
15,000, 20. whatever.
correct.
So in the 20 years, even if it was the same developer who, like, no, it had to be a new person.
No.
No, it had to, anybody.
So that parking space is going with that building, right?
Yeah,
And at the end of the 20 years, no matter who the owner is,
okay.
those licenses expire, and presumably they will come back to the council. But the council at that time, whoever's sitting in your seats, will make the determination.
Gotcha. Now, then, in addition to that, this is probably not a question for you, more for my fellow council members and the mayor, is, so this is one part of the fee structure, but obviously additionally, we were gonna be getting these permit fees from the people who are actually
Currently at
utilizing.
$150 a year.
Right,
Right.
and so we still need to ascertain, comparable areas, and according to that ordinance, it said to amend chapter 7 of Tenafly Municipal Code. So, when is that gonna be occurring? Because I know we gotta do part A for,
Go ahead, Wendy.
I can answer that one. Omar's office is the keeper of that type of permit, and right now is undergoing a survey of all of the fees from the clerk's office, so it would be done together with that and likely following Omar, in August? If not for the July meeting for introduction, then certainly for the August meeting, I would think.
but we were gonna do a lot of, not necessarily tied into all of the fees of that. This was gonna be very specific to.
So
this.
you actually already have on the books an overnight parking permit, which is what the council president was referring to, that is currently at a certain rate. All of those fees are already being looked at independently of this ordinance. So now it'll get tied in as well as part of this
I think it
review.
should, personally, I think you're thinking the same thing. I think it's
Yes.
just separate. It's
Yeah,
just a different
we're on a
thing.
different,
Yeah, it shouldn't be consistent with any of it.
With all the other overnight parking fees?
It should be a different fee, yeah, this is a different, and we have to see exactly what the overnight park fee is, but yeah, this is a different,
we're saying we want to take this out, actually, like to focus on this as opposed to all the other restructuring of the fees. I see what you're saying, but, but like his office is going through a whole bunch of fees. I think this is such an important issue.
Yeah, but it's still,
We would like-
You're still not gonna
it's still a parking ordinance.
right, so you still have already,
Is there another
other
category?
parking ordinances that are there. And there's still a review of those fees that are happening as well for commuter parking, et cetera. What I'm saying is you already have an ordinance on the book. I don't believe it's utilized very much as far as permits being requested, but you do already have the structure for overnight parking. And it will run concurrently with all the other parking permits at the same time.
And then last we spoke about this, there was gonna be a study done as to what the appropriate dollars were for both of these fees?
Go ahead, Wendy.
So as far as the permit fees itself, that I didn't do. I did look at other parking and loop payment ordinances that I'm familiar that other towns have it, and they range anywhere from $7,000 to $30,000.
And
for what period of time?
Eternity. It's just a one-time payment.
But
And those funds are,
But maybe I wasn't being clear. This is, and I think Adam, you know exactly what I'm saying. This discussion, it's about these fees for the overnight parking for these spots. I'm open to also talking about the commuter parking, but since this needs to be parsed out, pulled out, and then that was my original question of when are we doing that? Because I knew that we were doing this research of communities in the area and whatnot to get a dollar amount. We all believed it was glaringly low.
That's,
So I think,
So that's
I'm
on the
hearing
way.
that we need to, I don't know if August is the right time. I think maybe something in the fall where we can, we have less people away, and, maybe just be a little bit more focused on it, but specific, because this is gonna be a big source of revenue.
and I think I agree with you completely, and again, I think as council, we thought this was a good idea, what's the right fee? For me personally, and I've said this before, I think we put too much, we rely too heavily on property taxes, right? What is the number? 80-90% of all the taxes in our town is a function of just property taxes.
94%.
94%, yeah, it's off by 4%. So, but that's because we don't have the other things, just the other fees. I think we've made really nice steps looking at things from 100 years ago that, should be 37 cents.
Right.
Even stamps have gone up.
Councilman, hotel taxes.
I thought the
Which
same
is wonderful.
thing.
What we want to do is we want to find other sources of revenue, so our property taxes could either go down, or more realistically, stay where it is and let others pay those taxes. So when I saw this, to Councilwoman Dr. O'Connor, so what we're talking about is for a great opportunity to have the space downtown, and now you could add residential, which I think is good. We're charging $500 a year, $10,000 divided by 20 years, $500 a year, and $150 a year for the residents. That sounds wildly under what the value of prime property in the space, right? I told Council.
So I just would feel maybe better if we get that research really solidified so we can talk about it, but, I prefer the fall versus the summer.
So that's underway right now, Omar's doing that.
right, Omar's office is
That's
looking
not-
at the permit program. The payment in loop program, I've already looked at, and like I said, they
7 to 30.
They range between 8 and 30. Yes, I'm sorry, I might
And,
say
So you're
that.
going
and a year,
1950.
why are we have to do 20 years? Like, why can't we?
No, that's different. That's a different.
That's also.
No, that's the same thing
Same thing.
for the.
That's part of it. Why are we locking ourselves into 20 years also? Like, why can't we reevaluate in 5 years?
Well, you don't want to do that because you don't want to buy a property and know that now
Developer.
we're certainty. Yeah, you need some longevity. I think the
New
pricing.
question.
So I guess my question is, people are talking about a lot of money from other sources besides taxes. I just want to.
Other than our property taxes.
Right, other than
Taxes.
property taxes,
Yeah.
right. So the question, how much do you think this will yield in a year? By doing this?
$650.
No.
That's what it is.
No,
Right, it's
it's
really not enough.
So 20,000 for a parking spot times 20 spots, 20 years is $400,000, which is to 20,000 or 10,000, right? So that's the point is, we're really not going to be, no matter what we do, whatever plan we do with a parking ordinance like this, we're not going to be able to subsidize or support, taxes away from property.
So you're saying it's just not meaningful?
So it's never going to be meaningful. You have to go by, forget about the economics, just go by, whether it's something you want to do, not looking at the economics.
But I understand that, and I viewed the $10,000 allotments of the developer is its own thing. But, Wendy says but I was looking at it as, okay, now we have this resource. So 7,000 to 30,000.
8,000.
8,000 and up per year?
No, there were one-time fees that are paid into.
You're basically buying zoning.
So the
You're buying
resident, so
zone.
I don't like that structure. If I'm the renter,
You're not the renter, no.
Way more.
Hold on a second, we're mixing in.
it's two different things. I
Hold
know,
on a
like,
second.
yeah.
The renters have nothing to do with the pilot fees. The developer pays.
Remember, it's two fees. There's the fee that the developer
Yeah,
pays.
and then
And the fee that the resident.
the renter.
The renter pays to park their car.
Right, and that's the one I'm trying to get grappling with. The 10,000, that was asked and answered when they came
Well,
and
no,
we
it's
do
across
all
the
this
side.
out.
It's across
It's
the
too
side.
low.
Okay, so.
Yeah, but then, I
But
thought
in
there
some,
was.
so just to put in perspective, I'm gonna just make it up in our debate, you want $50,000. Again, it's over 20 years.
Yeah,
50,000 times 20, that's nothing, times 20 spots is $1 million.
hey, look,
Anyone want $1 million?
Over 20 years.
Doesn't matter, it's $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million over 20 years is not meaningful. Divide that by the 20 years, then think about how much you're getting for a specific year. And then compare that to the $31 million or $32 million that we're collecting in taxes for the municipal part.
28.
This is a.
but I am all for the developer paying, more per parking spot and it not be, 20 years. I'm all for that. I also am aware that it has to be appetizing enough for a developer to enter. I understand all that. I'm just saying, right now, look, if we could, counter and say, okay, pilot fee
There's
is
no
not
one
what it is.
counter.
This is all us.
It's us to decide.
That's
We can do $1 trillion.
But I think that's why it's on the ordinance. I'm like, okay,
Because that's what we're
we had-
dealing with tonight, is this ordinance.
exactly. But we talked about it at different points. I'm just saying that part two, that renter, that resident, that generator of income, that's very, 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 very low.
I believe we
Right, okay,
agreed
but
that
that's-
will be revisited annually.
Yes, that's.
May I interrupt just for
Go
a
ahead,
moment?
please.
Just keep in mind that once this ordinance is adopted, the first payment comes with an application for development that needs relief from a parking.
Which will be
requirement.
everybody.
The monthly or the annual permit, however it's set up, that won't come till the building's done. You have time to figure that out.
Okay, all right, well, there's my answer.
Okay, so
That the individual parking permits, that permit fee, that won't be relevant until one of the buildings that gets approval to
It's
pay a
done.
pileup is constructed and
Correct.
tenants are moving in.
If
So
somebody
you have
actually
plenty
wants
of
to talk.
time.
But
Well,
But-
it's not going to be before September.
But one necessitates the other. So
Correct.
if you've made the
Correct.
decision that you're going to go in this direction, you're at that point, you're not going to. It's just a matter of setting the amount. But you've already made the decision. So the question is should we make the decision based on what we think we can get from somebody who's parking there every year?
But we should also be transparent that, again, let me tell you a story. If we decide as a council that it should be $1,000 a month for parking,
No one's gonna buy it.
but we should say that now so the
Exactly.
developer doesn't buy a property
Yes.
and know that.
That's the point of why we're here tonight, the $10,000
Yeah, but
number.
that's,
No,
but that's
not
against what
the
Wendy
thing
was
is,
saying.
If the I think what the council president's saying is if the permit fee is so exorbitant to the tenant, nobody's gonna rent the unit.
Right.
Right, well, I think we have to obviously have a rental rate monthly that's reasonable and rational and is
But
a market rate.
but let me put, so again, let's say what is rational. It's $150 a year. I think it's $100 a month. And that, to me, sounds still stupidly lower than, again, you own property of sorts in downtown.
Right, okay, so,
But again, it's not a big deal. I just, again, to everyone's point, that's why we're having this conversation, because we want it to be transparent. I personally, if I were to throw numbers out based on what I'm seeing, what we're doing every day, I think it's certainly not $500 a year for the developer who's putting millions, plural, and is going to make millions, plural, out. I don't know. Is $50,000 so crazy, to Councilman Menon's point, every 20 years? That doesn't sound very crazy to me. At $100 a month, that doesn't sound very crazy to me. I personally believe you will see that in our P&L if you start with 20 things that, again, it's 20 just the beginning, right? If this is successful and we're all successful, maybe it's more. And look, it's one police. If we could save $50,000 a month, that's one car that we could get for our police, or new equipment we could get for our fire department. I'd take that.
Just keep in mind, the fees actually go into a dedicated fund for certain uses which are related to parking and roads. Which
Wait a minute.
offsets something.
I think we pay a couple dollars. Do we do stuff with
You'll be
roads?
offsetting
Yeah,
your,
so there you
any
go.
Roads are
paving you
good.
need to do
They do.
downtown, engineering designs of your
Great.
parking
Wow.
lots downtown. If you'd like to. at
Anybody in
some
the
point-
audience that likes stuff around downtown? Anybody?
If
I
you'd
have some
like,
kids.
all right, okay. one
if
at a
you would
time.
like to in the future create a parking lot to be able to sell more spaces, this is the money that would not then come from the taxpayers.
Oh my goodness, that sounds perfect.
All right, so the $10,000 number, where does the council want that number to be?
That's kind of the discussion, right?
Well, right now, you've got a 19 midpoint, Wendy?
I
mean,
I can't believe that's, I
I
don't
would
know how many we
recommend
looked
being
at.
around 25 at least, quite frankly. That's what Hackensack is what their fee is.
And
Okay,
that's
so
no
when
matter
you-
how much space they're giving?
It's
Per
parking
spot.
spot.
Per spot.
That's the
For a regular car.
That's the 20 years.
So
For
when
parking
you,
spot,
when
it's
you,
400.
when you looked at these things, what was the most recent that you saw, right? You have an average, but like, yeah, was one from the 1800s and one from 2024?
Well,
She's
so,
got
I mean,
Hackensack at
I was-
25.
I was part of Bound Brook when they did the 30,000. I will say it's tied strictly to the redevelopment area because it's.
How long ago was that?
Along the train,
How long ago was that?
right before I started here, so about 2019,
3.5
20.
years
And
ago.
there's this thing called
Okay, that way it was
inflation.
30 back then.
It was, and it still is, it hasn't been changed, but again, they have very large redevelopment along the train corridor.
Do they have
So,
monthly rental fees for each spot, like we're contemplating?
I don't recall,
Okay. What about the other two?
to be honest, I did not
Do that.
do
Okay,
that
that's fine.
because with the rental fees, more towns have permit programs. So it would be prudent to look in our area where not all towns have payment in lieu of parking.
Okay.
How did 10 get into the ordinance?
That's the number.
That's the number that would start.
So the ordinance, the goal is to introduce it tonight, so there is no ordinance. That was the working number we started with discussing originally,
Okay.
from the planning board to the council, back to the planning, and there was always a question about whether that is the right number or not.
Don't anchor. That was a made up number.
No, that's what I'm asking.
We could have
I don't
easily
know.
written
Might have
10
been debating
billion
before, and I
But
wasn't
that's my
there.
point is, there was always a question about whether the right number, and as you can see, there's different numbers. It's really,
The question I would have on Bound Brook was, did Bound Brook have to actually construct those?
Bound Brook
those
was
parking spaces-
collecting funds to actually construct a
So
parking
they-
structure.
They were.
They
ground
had
up.
surface parking, but in order to increase the amount of apartments and the abilities, then it would
And
require.
to your point, one of the things that we decided not to prioritize during the ARP discussion was we wanted to renovate. We know parking lot O is not the most beautiful thing in the world, so we wanted to, I would love to tell you at some point we could renovate.
Which is good. If you use that money to do that, that's good.
But
All right, so-
something, just something to keep in mind is the developer, whatever they were paying for the parking spot, they would most likely be able to pass that along in their, so.
Well, and the other thing on the monthly or annual fee can be, offset by the landlord.
So
By the landlord.
So
as well.
does anyone have a suggestion for a number as opposed to just discussing whether this is good enough or not?
Yeah, yes.
What's the number?
50.
1,000.
You say, I think we're at least that 10,000 better than Hackensack. Sorry, Hackensack.
And I would tell you, I think from a monthly perspective, is $100 a reasonable number? That sounds like.
Well, I would just recommend that you look more at annual rather than have to run collections on a monthly
Oh, yeah.
amount.
100 times 12 is?
Yes, I know how to get to 1,200. I'm just saying, let's talk about it as an annual number versus a monthly.
Think of it, you all have your own houses, you pay property tax, and part of what you're doing is you're paying for your own driveway, and, you come.
Now, let me ask this question, just so I'm clear. But during the day, does this person have exclusive access to this spot?
Okay,
Oh,
no.
no,
so
not this.
I don't think
that's-
during the day that's the
time out,
case.
That's not correct.
Okay, this is
None of these-
overnight.
The parking lots are assigned. None of the spots are assigned.
So, okay, so this is
Correct.
just, I can't park there overnight, but a paying
Yes.
tenant
Correct.
can.
If you move
That
into
makes
that,
sense. Okay.
if you move into that building and become a paying tenant, you can park overnight in any
They'll
spot
always
in
But
that lot.
Councilman Michaels is gonna tell me that somebody can park there and go on vacation, and leave their car there forever, and I'll never park there again.
That's possible, yes.
Correct.
It's possible, yes.
But keep in mind, you all are designating which parking lots
Correct.
are available for overnight parking. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one that's adjacent to a building.
And how many units of spaces are we talking about in
The
total?
ordinance contemplates 20 spaces total.
20 spaces total, so that's 10 units.
No, it's gonna
No,
be
one
40.
per unit.
One per
Oh, it's
unit.
one per unit,
Yeah.
okay.
That's all that's being reserved specifically.
Right, and the landlord has to provide
I would think
50% of the spaces themselves.
just so we're not exorbitant, like, it's gonna charge 1,000 a month. I think 200 a month is more than fair for a renter who's gonna rent a place downtown.
Well, it's good, at 50,000, it's more than 200 once you add in
No, but
the,
Well, it's the two separate numbers.
50,000 is getting passed along by the
It's gonna be
developer.
within it. Is there a way, is it appropriate?
It's over
Again,
20
I want to do
years.
stuff with everybody. Can we share with some of our businesses? I don't know if we have existing, I know we have existing downtown,
We have
Retail,
existing designated areas for business employees to park.
no, I'm sorry. Sorry, what I meant was, we have, the word's not developers, landlords. We have landlords downtown already. There are a couple, do we have any relationships with any of them
sure,
to
what's the question?
get their point of view on if we said,
200 a month.
yeah, I think it's possible, yeah, whatever the number is, so, and see what they think. And again, it's also, I don't know who's like a family of four, like we came to New Jersey for the space, so we personally wouldn't move there. So but the people that move there, that
Look.
group, what is the?
So
the-
we-
Right, I was gonna say, these are 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartments, like, I
I
think
thought
that
they were
we have,
smaller than that.
we have to, we're not the city, we're not looking at selling, like, we have to understand the people that are buying these, we have to make it affordable.
I
And
agree.
we have to make it, and I don't know, and I think 30, which is the top
It's
rating,
35,
or a
just
number,
Again,
35.
that's different.
I
That's,
just-
again.
That's
Just
different,
wanna
those are like
stop
the two
and just-
different things.
No,
Yeah, you have to-
let's
Wanna
just
be
get back
fair
to.
to everyone.
You
I
have to
hear
keep
you.
something
I
in
just wanna
mind,
be
you know,
fair.
at $50,000 a spot, we already have landlords on Washington and Railroad that already have deals with other property
Yeah,
owners
I
where
know.
cars are parking.
Yeah.
And at $50,000 a spot, Well, for 20 spots, 50,000 times 20 is about $1 million.
Over 20 years.
No, that's not my point.
They have to pay it
For $1
upfront.
million,
Oh, yeah.
you can buy a piece of property and park the cars on it
Right,
and pay the borough nothing.
And
Exactly.
that's.
But no
their
one guy
option.
is gonna buy 20 spots. No one developer is buying
Yeah.
all 20 spots.
They're not.
Right, but all I'm saying is you're getting close to, like, so if I spend $1 million and buy a parking lot and charge everybody whatever,
Right.
$200 a month, rather than the borough making the money, I'll make the money.
Okay, so Wendy, you said
I'm
30,
just,
Yeah, I agree.
No, but that's
50,000 is a
and
big
then
number.
their option is them deciding how many they choose to go for.
No, we
If
just
they
have to
have-
find a.
Jeff, you have any
Yeah.
recommendations or comments?
well, I was going to suggest, and I think Councilman Michael said, having a discussion with some developers, because the whole point of this parking ordinance is to encourage
Right.
the development of the downtown. We've had this ordinance on the books, right? These mixed-use ordinances for 10 to 15 years of apartments over the first floor, and nothing's happened because the borough can't provide parking. So I think you shoot yourself in the foot if you made it too prohibitive, and you therefore are not encouraging this. So
But I-
I think it's appropriate for discussion and to come to a conclusion that makes sense for the borough and makes sense to spur the development.
I understand that is an agenda,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we also have to safeguard the town to get the most money
absolutely.
possible because,
Oh, absolutely.
yes, I'm not here just,
Oh,
to
absolutely.
make
But
it.
it's a good point about not being short-sighted.
Right.
I respect and appreciate that point. Wendy, I'm going to go back and ask you, you said 35 was Hackensack or
25.
25, and that was in 20,
I'm not sure. I could look
okay, a
up
few
and see
years
when
ago,
it was
right? So if we
adopted.
look at an
It's
inflation-adjusted
what it
number,
is today. I don't know how long it's been in place and
Okay.
whether they've adjusted it.
but whenever they made the decision, and I think it's important that we have been agitating, aggravated by lack of development, and so we should be encouraging the development for sure. We also have to make sure the borough is treated fairly. I think that if we run it at at the number that was most recently printed, and if you look at it on an inflation-adjusted basis, it needs to be defensible to people. I would also suggest that perhaps we do something where you have a first mover advantage. Maybe the first few spots trade differently than the last few spots to encourage people to be here now. There's an advantage to building in Tenafly. There's an advantage to being early, and you can get in early at a cheaper rate. That number is going to go up inherently later on. I would leave room to do that because we do want people doing these things, and we've been asking for this. So it's a fair point not to shoot ourselves. The annual revisitation of the parking fee, so the other fee, annual is fine. Wherever we set that today or anything else, it's 12 months, who cares? To Vinu's point, it's, that one in particular is going to be like $8.52 a year. It's not that big a deal for us, right? But, this first one, let's use this as a draw in. Today it's 10, but in a year it's going to 15, and in a year after that it's going to 20. And maybe we revisit that and we can't follow that strategy, but get people in and get it started would probably be our best bet. I'm not saying 10's the right number, but something like
So
that.
what number would you suggest?
I'm a 20 guy to start, and I'm 20 grading to 35.
I'm 50.
Why don't,
I
we don't have to make it now. I think the decision, why don't we hear
Talk
back
to the developers.
talk to the developers, talk to
Yeah,
the
get some data.
tenants, talk to whatever, and just.
So
get us
let me
some-
ask you a question. Do you want to get this first reading done tonight so we can get it moving? Can we get it resolved and we can put whatever number we want by the second reading?
Yeah, I don't think it's very hard to get
Can't do
data.
that?
We just
We
need
would have to
data.
have a third reading.
Okay.
We just don't
Yes.
know what the right number is.
If there isn't agreement on a number tonight, I would recommend not
Right.
moving forward with introduction.
I
But
had
once
thought
you-
the 10,000 number ship had sailed because
Right.
of those discussions previously.
What we're
That's
going to
all.
learn from the developers is once you get to $25,000, that's the cost of building a new parking spot and a parking deck. And so that's per spot.
Great
It is,
data. I don't know
but-
that.
But that's theory, because there are no parking decks in Tenafly, and there's no land in Tenafly to build a parking deck.
Then I'll
So
build somewhere else is the problem.
There's-
you can't build somewhere else. People live here. They're not going to drive 40
No, they're
minutes.
They're not gonna
That's-
I'll
say
invest
to
in another
build
town,
here.
a more
That's
accommodative
in
town.
other
Yeah,
towns.
so we can see what the number is. Again, personally, $20,000 on 20 years is $1,000 a year. You're building a multi-million
So you cut it to
dollar.
10.
But then
And
to
you're
Mark,
right.
to-
Finish your thought, Adam.
Time.
No, I think we just have to find the right number, and again, let's see
Go
what
ahead,
the.
Bill.
I would trade the time variable
To-
over the money.
Hold on, one at a time. Vanu has the floor.
So to Mark's point, if it's cost prohibitive for someone will build a parking area and do the same thing. You're still getting your incentive. You're still getting the ability for
Yeah,
people
if
to
someone
say.
built a garage.
So you can set it at the 50,000 and then take your chances that somebody might build a parking lot.
Dan,
So just building off that time issue, instead of making some one-time fee, make it lower forever.
So there was discussion of that on the council a few meetings ago, before it got sent back to the planning board to review. And the idea was if you make it for a longer period, you don't have to go on collections, right? This fee has to get done before CO. Am I right, Jeff? Is that how it's structured? The
Yes,
payment,
yes,
the
that-
pilot would be
yes.
before
Yeah,
CO.
so it's actually a condition of approval. So if a developer comes in, say, and needs 4 parking spaces, and you've already given out 17, so you only have 3 available, the developer can only get 3, right? You can't do development. That's a condition of approval until perhaps either one opens up or figures out how to resolve it. But
So it's balancing, how do you want to have it? I mean, if the building is there and somebody got the variance for 4 spaces and doesn't pay on year 3, what's left to do in enforcement? You have to go into litigation.
Or in that scenario, if there's 17 and they need 3, or there's only 3 and they need another 8, they can come back to the council and say, we want you to increase the number from 20
right,
to
and
30.
council always has that right. I
Sure.
mean, I think
So, I
that's
mean, there's never a.
right. I think the whole intention here is for council to evaluate how this is working after a period of time and say if it's working the way you anticipated or if it needs some tweaking.
Well, to your point, even if you went 20 years or let's say 10 years, I like 10 years like a shorter duration. At the end of 10 years, we say, it's a different charge.
keep something in mind. 10 to 20 years from now, everyone then 10 to 20 years is going to do what they want to do. Whatever we do now isn't going to be relevant in 20 years as it relates to what the fees are going to be for anything. We can't bind a future council.
No.
I'm all for upping the fee, but I thought the 10,000 was what we discussed in the past, but I'm right there for it if that gets up.
I think we need data to choose something that's responsible, that's commercially reasonable, that doesn't discourage development,
Okay,
but
so we
pays
need
us
to
for
do
it.
some more homework on that.
Yeah, and one of the things that we can look at is the cost of reconstruction of infrastructure.
Yep.
Right, so,
Oh, yeah, that's
you're gonna float a bond if you're gonna do a road paving program,
Right.
and you can finance asphalt for over a 10-year period. So we can get some information through research on that, come up with a number and get back to the
Okay.
And
council.
David, I would actually also recommend looking at the value per square foot in town of open land to also
Oh,
tie it
yeah.
in from that.
That's good too.
All right,
Okay,
great.
all right.
All right. I'm sorry, but I have to.
Go
make
ahead.
one- I have to make one correction to what I said earlier. The councilman asked me a question early on, and I said it expires after 20 years, which is correct. After that period of time, it's in the borough's sole discretion to whether they're going to renew or not. There was something added, and I apologize, there's been a lot of back and forth, which is to say, if the borough does renew the pilot fee, that it shall not exceed the percentage increase in CPI from the date of enactment. So in other words, what CPI, cumulative CPI would be 20 years forward. So I forgot to add, that was a recommendation, and the recommendation, the thought behind it from the planning board level was so that a business person somehow has some ability to plan what their projected increases are. But I just wanted to point that that is in there, and if it's objectionable.
But since we're pulling it anyway, though, right, then I guess that could all be fixed as well.
I mean, CPI makes sense because it basically tracks inflation, so it does
Right.
give a level of comfort of where you
A
go.
predictability.
Right, that was the point
Yeah.
of putting it in there.
Okay.
All right, Jeff, thank you very
Thank
much.
you for coming. Very
We'll see you
helpful.
again in 4 weeks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.
All right, with the council's indulgence, I'm going to switch if it's okay, to switch the administrator's report with public comment, since we have quite a few people here. We're going to move into public comment. Jean, do you want to get your group? Okay, we're going to do the kids first, and then everyone else. I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. What? Yeah. We're waiting for them. What?
The tax assessment structure.
All right. Okay. That's another thing in terms of what we're paying for the response, right? In terms of market value. All right, who's coming up to the microphone? Of course. So bend the microphone down a little bit, okay? And just give us your names, not your addresses, okay?
Hello, my name is Mia Mermelstein.
I am Agam Weisman. I am Gabby Sklo. And I am Bella Torin. We are recent graduates from Smith Elementary School.
We are here today to give a presentation on how we can increase safety for you and your pet.
Do you want to protect your pet and yourself? If so, keep listening. Imagine this. You're driving and get an important message. So grab your phone to answer it. You are so focused on your phone. You do not notice a car pull up in front of you. You know what comes next. Boom. When you're walking a pet, for example a dog, if you're on your phone, you probably won't notice that your dog is stretching its leash and goes into the road. Some say the dog walkers who are on their phones can confuse or frustrate the pet that is on its leash and can put the pet in danger.
Over 5.5 million animals are killed per day worldwide, while 2 billion animals are killed annually by vehicles. Most car crashes are caused by phone use. They lead to 1.6 million crashes each year. And it is predicted that over 3,000 humans will die because of distracted driving in 2024. Some ways you can help is by not texting while driving. If you need to text, pull over so animals and humans can be safe.
The town can also put up signs with reminders to stay off the phone while driving and walking. That will help people remember to not be on their phone while they're either driving or walking their dog and reduce car accidents. Another way you can help is by watching the road for animals while they are crossing the road. Stop and either wait for them to cross the road or help them. You could also put your phone on Do Not Disturb mode. This is a mode that makes sure your messages will not make any noise or pop up on your screen. Also, phone calls will not make any noise. That was our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Go ahead. Did you want to say anything else? No more. So David, how does it, do we have any, don't go anywhere, girls, yet. That's actually an interesting idea. Do we have any signs in town that say, no texting or driving or something like that? I know I've seen them on highways.
No, I know that they have text, wait for the rest area to text, or
Right.
text area on the highways. And obviously, you're not permitted to text while you're driving on a motor vehicle. But
A lot of times,
ahead.
like my dad will be driving me to school or something, and a lot of times we see people who are like on their phones, like walking their dog, and like not paying attention. And one time we had to like swerve because we almost ran over someone's dog because they weren't paying attention, and the dog was like walking into the road.
You're completely right. May I suggest that this goes out as part of a mayor's message, that we do an
I
awareness
could do that. You
campaign?
want me to include that in my mayor's message this Friday? Okay.
Yes, please.
And
Can I just
go ahead.
say a personal story? So I live along Tenafly Road, and my dog, she got out of the backyard and ran when she was like a puppy, and she ran across the street, and someone hit her on Tenafly Road. They were speeding, and they did not even stop. And so we rushed her to the Oradell Animal Hospital, and luckily she lived, but she's got this crooked paw. But she looks ridiculous. She just walks around with a crooked paw, but it just shows like there's so much speeding, and it's dangerous for humans and animals. I've definitely lived that.
But it's a good point. I do the same thing. I walk my dog, and I'm guilty of being on my phone. So I appreciate the awareness. I won't do it anymore.
This is why we really need signs, because this happens a lot, actually.
Wait.
Also, I believe it would make a safer environment for everybody if people weren't worrying about like running over more animals. And you know how there are lots of deer in Tenafly, and
Yes.
how they're always like crossing the road, and they're dumb, so they can't really know that cars are coming. I think that we should come up with something to try to make sure like more animals like deers and turtles are safe, because I've seen a lot of roadkill.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from anyone on the dais? Yeah.
Just to your question about signage, the electronic message board in front of the police department, every so often there is the no texting and driving
Does.
sign up.
We should talk with the chief. When you get it, let's talk with the chief to see about the idea of the phone with the circle and the cross, for drivers to see.
okay.
Well, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
It's also not just while driving, because most of the times there are these signs on like highways and stuff, but a lot of times people are texting while walking, which is also unsafe, because I've seen multiple people texting while walking, and you can like get hit by a car if you're not paying attention. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Very helpful. Good job. Great job. Okay, so I'm opening the floor to any other public comments. Just feel free to come up to the microphone. Please, Linda, come on up. I saw your hand first. Good night, girls. If you could just give us your name, we no longer give addresses out.
Okay. Linda Trembicki, Tenafly resident. Is this working?
It sounds like it's just a little closer, maybe. Raise it up a little bit. Yeah.
Linda Trembicki. Is that okay? So I am here just because I happened to get notified by a friend about a May 21st meeting where the topic of an open discussion was bamboo. And the part of the discussion was whether the statute that's currently on the books in Tenafly should be adjusted or, modified in some way, and, how it should be enforced. And when I saw that, I wanted to come in and basically let you know it's not just those neighbors. Sadly, I too am the unfortunate owner of bamboo that has come onto my property. And while I'm not here to talk about my property itself, I did want to put forth my, 2 cents that I think it's very important to enforce the statute as is or make it stricter. And the reason for it is I'm telling you, I've never seen anything that survives like this. I have cut it. I have pulled out rhizomes. I have put plastic barriers along. I have put more, what do you call that stuff that, the things that they tell you to put on the ground, the Roundup. I must have my own little super fund. This thing still grows. And it is the most invasive thing I've ever seen. It's a grass, but this thing is unbelievable. I've actually have it coming across my yard now. So every day, daily, I go out and look at this and try to dig up pieces so it doesn't spread further. So, I think for people who don't have it, you see it, you don't necessarily, see the impact of it. But I can tell you personally, I've never had it for 20 of the 25 years I've lived in this town. And I think because the house behind me, was raised and then development happened and the ground was perhaps disturbed. It's the only reason why I think it perhaps spread onto my property now. But it really is something that becomes, the gift that keeps giving. And believe me, it's not a gift that I certainly want. It certainly sounds like the other folks didn't want it either. And I do think it's a serious issue around town. So, I wanted people to know, at least I'm several blocks away from these other folks. It certainly is something that exists in different pockets of town, it seems. And with all the rain and all the, humidity, et cetera, it seems to be growing much more intensely than it had before. I've actually taken the opportunity to try to put those plastic borders in 3 feet deep on my property. But quite honestly, unless neighbors of mine who I'm, trying to contact to remedy their portion of it, unless they do theirs, it's going to keep coming toward me or toward other people because it has to be contained in a way, which I think our statute is lending, to try to do, or you can't really solve your own problem because if it can't come crossways, it goes forward, it goes backwards, and it really prevents you from the enjoyment of your own property. In my particular instance, we saw it coming. We tried to border it a little bit just to keep it at bay, and it worked for a while, but it continues to grow very thickly and extremely tall. And the roots of this have choked out my trees, which, we all know we all love our trees. It's killed the trees. It's caused plants of mine to die. It's because the roots just get involved in everything. It's twisted around my lights, that I have those lights that try to shine up on trees. So it really has a life of its own. So, I just wanted to say, I'd be grateful if you do go forward and get other people, involved in order to, talk about, or experts to talk about the bamboo. I'd love to hear about that meeting and come in for that too, because I have to tell you, in my experience, it's not something I've wanted. It's something I'd like my neighbors to get control of. Right now, it's in that 10-foot buffer zone, so I'm trying to see if they can control that. I have done my own, at my own expense, bordering parts of my property, but it's not really enough. And I do think we need to enforce this statute. I would really commend a height restriction too. This stuff grows 30, 40 feet tall. I don't see why anybody needs that amount of privacy. And, for a neighbor that's nearby, based on what your position is, it actually will kill your grass, kill your plants, et cetera. So if we allow it, I'm not telling other people what to do. I think it should be maintained. They should control it. They should make sure it doesn't get on other people's property, especially those that don't want it. And I think that it is important to have, the containment aspects, whether it's 10 feet, 20 feet. I really wouldn't recommend less than that in my own personal opinion, because at least it gives you a running start once it's dug out and under control to see it coming so you can get to it before it starts to invade the rest of your property. But it's a big issue. And, I say this trying to control it myself from where it's come. But, I think it's something that certainly, and it's more than just the people that were on, I can't remember the road they were on a few blocks away from me. It certainly is on my property too. And I hate to see the statute lessened. If anything, I would like to see the statute more strict and make sure that it actually is enforced for anybody who needs to, promptly enforced. So it continues to keep at bay from people who really don't want this. So I appreciate your listening to it, but that was, I felt it was important when I heard about it to come in, knowing it's not just people on one street. I mean, I have it too. Certainly. Yes.
Other than the buffer, are they doing anything else, do you know, to?
They're doing nothing. And once again, I'm happy to share it. I didn't want this, I've tried to reach the neighbor unsuccessfully. I've now reached the code person because it really has become unwieldy. And I tried myself. I'm in the process of doing things. But I can tell you, and once again, I'm not even blaming my neighbor, because I think until this rule came in a long time ago, this existed before this particular neighbor came. It was there. But they're not doing anything to contain it. And when the one conversation I had, they like their bamboo. That's great. I just don't like it. I don't want it. And for me, we all know I was here about solar. It's so tall that it actually does, it gets so tight that you get no light coming through it either. So it has impact on, a recipient, if you will. In their case, I think they didn't really realize, well, they like it. And hopefully now they're aware that you really aren't supposed to have it in this area and it needs to be contained. I'm hopeful that's going to happen, though nothing has happened yet for my own personal circumstance. But it's something that goes at least 150 feet across a property, and it's at least 10 feet deep. And it is so thick that nothing gets through this thing. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I mean,
Okay.
it would be a great science experiment, because if you need something that's that, intense, I'd say that's it. And from having cut down the stalks, I mean, this stuff is intensely strong, so it has a real life to it.
All right, Linda, thank you. We
Absolutely. Thank you
appreciate
very
your
much.
time.
And if, for instance, if there is something, I know meetings sometimes, the agendas get posted a day or two before, but if somebody knows that there is somebody, or you're taking some, I don't know, statutory change or whatever, I'd love to participate in the
Okay.
meeting. If,
Very good.
you wouldn't mind. Thank you again.
Thanks, Linda. Bye. Who would like to speak next, please? Just your name.
Good evening. My name is Robert Silber. I'm an attorney appearing on behalf of Jeff and Karen Katz, also joined by Dave Cavilla of Camberley Gardens. Dave will be speaking shortly after. I just wanted to make a brief presentation on behalf of the Katzes. First, hopefully all of you have received the submission that the Katzes made. They spent a great deal of time to try to educate everybody on their situation, as well as the steps they've taken to try to remedy the situation with all the neighbors. They have five or six different property owners adjoining their property, and more than 2 years ago, I reached out to all 6 of them to resolve the issue in a neighborly, peaceful manner. Unfortunately, as you were made aware, 2 of the neighbors declined the invitation to either speak to Mr. Cavilla, speak to myself, to try to fashion a remedy for the situation. The purpose tonight is, again, to encourage the council to revisit the issue in terms of the 10-foot buffer that you have. Many times when I speak to clients, my conversation ends up with, what's the goal of the exercise? And in this case, I think the goal of the exercise is to try to find something that, number one, protects property owners so that they don't have the encroachment of bamboo on their property, while at the same time preserving the property interest of the owner who has bamboo on their property, not because they planted it, but because they basically inherited the bamboo. And that's why I think it was important when the Katzes made their submission to you, you could see they could have remediated the bamboo while they were doing their landscaping when the house was being constructed. Unfortunately, there was no bamboo ordinance on the books at the time, so they worked within what they had. They've, again, approached all the neighbors on the property after being notified by the borough. Most all of them, except the 2 remaining property owners, declined their opportunity either to speak to Mr. Cavilla, speak to myself, or do anything, and instead basically relying on the ordinance that's on the books. The ordinance, again, Mr. Cavilla can speak to, 10 feet is no different than 2 feet. If you properly install a remedial system and properly maintain that, that will stop the spread of the bamboo onto neighboring properties and effectively remediates the issue. Hopefully, the council can hear from Mr. Cavilla this evening and have a better understanding of the issue in hopes that the ordinance in place can be modified to reflect this. Again, the modification is not going to impact in a negative way the woman who spoke briefly before me, nor the neighbors. Everybody doesn't want to have bamboo spreading onto other properties. The question becomes for the council is what's on the books an appropriate remedy to the situation, or is it an expansive remedy that unfortunately has a negative byproduct? And many times they have the right intention, but the impact to it, such as what you're asking the Katzes to do, is basically $100,000 of landscaping remediation when they can put in a system that can control the bamboo, limit or eliminate any spread of the bamboo, but not have them take down something that they basically inherited on their property. And that's why I'd like to call Mr. Cavill of Camberley Gardens, who has extensive experience with the issue, to give his input as to what he would suggest that council moving forward adopt, and my clients would be willing to immediately install the system.
Can I ask a question?
Please, sure.
It sounds like what you're really pursuing here is a 2 versus 10, right? You're not suggesting that it's an unreasonable position, that, you know, there's a barrier requirement or otherwise. It's just 2 versus 10.
That's absolutely correct. And in fact, that's what's been installed in all the other properties. So, you know, again, I don't know how extensive you went into the submission they made, but all the neighboring properties have had barriers installed successfully, stopping the problem. Again, they didn't install it on the 2 properties because if they did it, then you said, well, that's not good enough. It should be 10 feet. Why would spend tens of thousands of dollars doing something? We were hoping to get, again, the consent of the neighbor, as the other neighbors had to a modified agreement that would solve the situation, would remedy the problem. Correct. We're not saying by any stretch not to install a system. It's just the town ordinance of 10 feet. And again, not to harken back to the presentation that the Cats has submitted, but there is no absolute right number or wrong number, but 10 feet does seem to be an excessive number, because essentially it's, by putting 10 feet, you're saying just remove it entirely, as opposed to, if the goal is to stop it from spreading, 2 feet plus having a system installed in the ground will do that.
So just 2 quick questions.
Please.
You're also suggesting that the difference between 2 and 10 feet has a meaningful economic impact as the remediation of the 8-foot differential.
Because you're basically taking away, the bamboo acts as a very solid shield. And again, I don't want to take Mr. Cavilla's, you know, thunder away, but it has a very effective way of providing a shield for both properties. If you remove the whole thing, you basically have a wide open. Correct. Yes, correct. Yeah, it's full removal and full replacement.
It's like $30,000 to clear the bamboo and like $70,000 to plant new trees.
Yeah, right. It's yeah, correct. It's
Okay,
both.
let's just stay focused here with
Correct.
crosstalk.
Mr. Cavill?
All right.
See if it's-
Okay.
I'm sorry, would anyone have any questions before I turn it over to Mr. Cavill?
Rob, I wanted to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. This is Jeffrey Katz, the property owner.
So,
Just give us your name, Mr. Katz.
yeah, my name's Jeff Katz, the homeowner at 62 Park Street. Did everyone have a chance to see the submission with all the pictures that we included? Because I have copies here. You can see what the property looked like before, and then how we were able to remediate it, and the bamboo's not spreading. So, you know, let me start by saying we want to resolve this issue as much as anyone. Okay, at the May 21st meeting, Mr. Goldsmith said he wasn't as concerned with the bamboo's distance from the property line as he was with its height. He also listed several other issues he had. From the beginning, we try to be reasonable and address Mr. Goldsmith, Ms. Song, and Mr. Liu's concerns. We introduced them to Mr. Cavilla and proposed a remediation plan specifically tailored to their goals, namely 1, cutting the bamboo back from the property line, 2, installing a roof barrier, 3, controlling its height, and 4 is tying it so it doesn't lean. The reasons we've had to delay all this time is we aren't going to go through the headache and expense of removing all of the bamboo from the buffer zone without going through the appeal process, which is what we're doing now. And the second reason for the delay is our recommendations weren't acceptable to the other parties and they weren't responsive. We've successfully resolved this issue with 3 other neighbors. To say we're unconcerned or have done nothing is a gross mischaracterization. There are several reasons why we object to the ordinance and are appealing it. First, complying with it would be unduly onerous to us, costing something in the neighborhood of $100,000, as well as disrupting the property. Second, even if we comply with the ordinance as is, there's no guarantee that either of our neighbors would be happy with the result. For instance, if we decided to keep the bamboo, it would be more than the 10 feet from the property line, but it could be any height we wanted, okay? If we replace the bamboo with trees, the trees will grow taller than the bamboo and make our neighbor's yards darker.
Third, the 10-foot buffer zone is arbitrary and unnecessary to prevent the spread of bamboo. We've installed a barrier system in our yard and we do not have bamboo spreading past the barrier. Furthermore, I think the ordinance will need to be rewritten no matter what. In its present form, there's no discretion for anyone to approve bamboo in the buffer zone. All bamboo within the buffer zone, whether neighbors are okay with it or not, needs to be removed. It would be unfair to only enforce this ordinance on us and not the rest of the town. I don't think this was your intention when this was passed. I would have hoped that this was something that neighbors could have worked out, but we are where we are. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a process question. So is this like an appeal process?
We're
right
we're in
now?
public comment right now. We're in
Okay.
public comment.
And just to clarify, there is
Right.
no appeal process
Right.
in the ordinance.
Okay, that's why I just, because you mentioned an appeal process.
I basically, we're to revisit, to revise.
So
Correct.
just to clarify, I'm not trying to counter what you're saying, but there is an appeal process specifically for the tree ordinance that the council is familiar with. So I think that's what they were equating with, and I
Right.
want to let them know that that wasn't written in like the tree ordinance
Prior
was.
meeting, there was a discussion amongst the council to revisit, making revisions to the ordinance. It's those revisions that Mr. Katz is discussing. And again, as Councilman Leary said, we're not opposing putting in the barriers. It's the 10 feet as opposed to a 2 feet setback from the property line. And again, Mr. Cavilla, who's here this evening, can offer his professional opinion as to the suitability of what we're requesting or recommending to the council.
Dave, just give us your name. You don't need to give us your address.
My name is Dave Cavilla. I'm a Tenafly resident, been in town since 1979. Been in business for 30 years as a landscape contractor. I've seen a lot. I'm sure there's plenty more to see. So I'm going to give you sort of a different approach because I see both sides of it. I've planted bamboo, don't plant it any longer, but I also do a lot of bamboo remediation. Tenafly, Englewood, Richfield Park, Leonia. These are clients that we work for. We've had a very successful method for basically installing a bamboo root barrier and also managing the existing bamboo that's escaped to neighbors' properties. So what we typically do is we install a polyethylene barrier. It's about 60 mils thick. It's very, very thick. You can't break it with your hands. You can't cut it with a knife. It's installed vertically into the ground, and we generally have it protrude 2-4 inches above grade so we can monitor the barrier, which is the most crucial component. So by keeping that barrier above grade, you can walk through the area. You can see whether or not you can. The barrier itself goes about 2 feet deep. You have to understand something about bamboo. Bamboo is not like a carrot. It doesn't grow down into the ground and grow 5 feet down. Most of the biomass is within the first 12 inches of the soil. So it's easy to remove. Let me rephrase that. It's much easier to remove than other materials such as wisteria. And everybody's familiar with wisteria. It's a beautiful vine. You sell it all the time. That's not regulated. And I can tell you from a job we just did in Tenafly in Lancaster, wisteria is a whole lot harder than bamboo. It took my crews 4 days to remove a small section.
A quick question. The bamboo, now it can go onto a neighbor's yard if it's not regulated or whatever. Is there the possibility of bamboo kind of going to other parts by just whatever seeds or anything propagating it in some way?
Actually, the easiest way to spread bamboo is to cut it up with a piece of machinery and then dispose of it incorrectly. So I've got a picture I can show you of a piece of bamboo. It's a sprout this long, and it can regenerate. So the key is you have to remove it by hand. You've got to play by what we call the rules, which is you've got to take it out by hand carefully. You've got to monitor the area for a couple of years. And if you do that, you'll have an effective control as long as you maintain that barrier. And that's what we do, and we've done it quite effectively. People call us for bamboo removal, and we work with them. We come in sometimes after other contractors who have tried to do the job, and we go in and remediate their work that was done incorrectly. There's some famous people in the state that sell themselves on that. Their systems don't work. They oftentimes will dig it out with machinery. In saying that, we've had good results. It's not a lot of fun digging out bamboo, but it can be maintained. I will say a couple of things about the plant itself. It is a grass. It's very aggressive in its growth, which is its strength and its weakness. But the flip side is that it's not browsed by deer. As all of you know, many of the plant materials that we're used to are no longer available. which leads us to another plant material, which is called green giant arborvitae, which you've probably all heard of. I'd like to remind you that green giant arborvitae, which is the plant du jour all across Tenafly, we plant them all the time. If you look it up, it grows 50 to 60 feet tall, which is far in excess of what the height of the bamboo. So you have to think about the law of unintended consequences. If this bamboo is to be removed, it can be done, but what will be replaced? What will replace it? And green giants are the go-to because they're deer resistant. So you're gonna end up with a taller plant material in that area. So I think the point I'm trying to drive is that it can be done as long as you play by the rules, and it's somebody that is willing to pursue the bamboo, which is what we had proposed to do, which is, we had said to we offered to the adjacent neighbors orally when we met with them, you have our number, you see bamboo, you call us, we'll come and take care of it. That was an ongoing promise to these clients, to these neighbors. And there are, of the 5, 3 of them we remediated their bamboo issues. I haven't gotten any calls back from 2 of those 3. One of them had a little bit along the fence line. We took care of that, but it was an area that we couldn't get at. And now we're in pretty good shape.
Mr. Gavila, are you saying that the 10-foot buffer that's currently in the code, you're saying that if it was a 2-foot buffer, is there an advantage, or you're saying it's irrelevant as far as the control?
I think the only relevance is access. If we can get in there, we don't need much space to get in between a property, assuming there's a fence, maybe there's not even a fence. We can get in there, we can solve the problem. But at the end of the day, my adjacent neighbor has bamboo he planted after the ordinance was put in place. I'm aware of it. I'm aware he's got a barrier. I don't have a problem with it because it provides privacy for me. And if that bamboo jumps the barrier, I'll be the first person to be on his case. So,
can I ask you one other question with your expertise? I believe at the time when the ordinance was passed, we were looking at other communities that we were kind of taking our ordinance, basing it on those. You work in many towns. Is this the template you do see in most towns, or?
it's, to be honest with you, it's all over the place. I think they tried to ban the sale of bamboo, the Yellow Grove bamboo, or whatever it was. So every time we go to, we start from scratch. And whatever is on the books today may not be on the books tomorrow, maybe a change. So we really don't know. And how many communities are in New Jersey? 500 plus? It's hit or miss. But
and you've never seen anything dealing with height, per se, like, do you ever get called in and say, okay, now trim, whether it's bamboo or arborvitae, is that something that is called upon, in your services?
So in our business, we do get calls regarding height all the time. And as a contractor, you have to understand a little bit about plant materials. You can't top some plant materials effectively. You're basically, it's a death sentence for the plants. And people have done it for years. We did it when we started out because we were just ignorant. But people would come in and top hemlocks. You probably know hemlock hedges. They're not as common as they used to be because of the woolly diligent and scale. But they would create a giant hedge out of hemlocks. And hemlocks are trees. They're meant to grow 50, 70, 100 feet tall. And what it does is it damages them. So when it comes to plant materials like bamboo, we have to explain a little bit about how they grow. Bamboo is a grass, and it comes in different what we call cultivars or cultivated varieties. Cultivars are like people. People grow taller, people grow shorter, color hair, so on and so forth. So when you pick a material, whether it be a bamboo or an arborvitae, you select for the client's requirements. And in the case of green giant arborvitae, using that as a parallel, that grows 50 to 60 feet tall, which in many cases is way too large.
Yeah.
But people don't know that. And that's where we're called in. Professionals are called in. And we can tell you that there are different cultivars, such as steeplechase or spring grove, that will grow to be 30 feet or 20 feet. So that's really the scenario where the plant material has to be selected carefully. There are some bamboos that grow 2 feet tall, 3 feet tall. That's it. They will never grow taller. They're not genetically capable of doing that.
Any other questions from the council members?
You asked about the local ordinances. I think only 20 to 25% of towns in New Jersey have an individual ordinance. Everyone else falls back on the state ordinance, and the state ordinance.
Just to correct you though, I did see your letter. There is no state statute. The legislation that you referenced was introduced. It was never adopted. It went to committee. It wasn't adopted. So there is no state statute.
So there is nothing.
It's only regulated at the local level.
Okay.
Well, so there's still only 20 or 25% of towns that have
All right, Dave, thank you. Okay. You want to make another comment, Linda? Okay. You have to come up to the microphone and give us your name again.
Linda Trimbicki. I would just like to make one other comment, and this may relate to more than just the bamboo, but once again, I'm drawing on my own personal circumstance here, but I've lost all my landscaping in one section where this bamboo was. And I think, what I think is if there's a 10-foot barrier or whatever the amount is, it at least gives a chance for some sunlight to come into my property, for me to have the plants and trees that I wanted, because they're all dead. They're all gone now. They've all been eaten up by this bamboo. So yes, I understand maybe there's other, trees that block some of this too, but I just think that a neighbor shouldn't be forced to, or shouldn't be able to have their own enjoyment of their property because somebody else plants something else so close to the border that's massive and spreads. Maybe with the arborvitae, at least they're not going to have the root system spreading into your,
Okay.
into your own property. Maybe if it has to be that way, maybe that's a better way. But, I can tell you, I wasn't too thrilled to lose some pretty expensive landscaping that matched everything else along the symmetry of my backyard. So it's just something to, to think about. There is something about this height, and there is something about, the barrier that I think allows some
Okay.
sunlight in the property so it doesn't destroy your own grass and your own,
Okay,
items.
got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else here who would like to make a public comment? Okay, no one in the chambers. Anyone online who wants to make a public comment? Omar, anyone there raising their hand?
Anyone would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. See no hands, Mayor?
No? Okay, so we're going to close public comment time. Thank you for all your comments this evening, okay? Appreciate it. Thank you for your time, everyone. You learned a lot, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the administrator's report, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We've been making some progress, as you know, with the bid process for downtown. The bid opening was this morning, again, for the second time around for the interim closure of Piermont Road. We had one bidder that was over the engineer's estimate, and the second bidder did not submit their documents correctly, so it was a fatal submission and could not be considered. So there's resolution on later in the agenda to reject those bids and authorize a rebid for the process.
A rebid, or are we going out for quotes?
A rebid. The issue is that it's going to be funded with federal funds, so they are going to look very closely for the bid process.
Okay.
The interim closure of Piermont and the timing
So what are
study.
we going to do differently from definition of insanity? So this is going to be the third time.
Right.
What are we doing differently such that we get a viable bid?
Well, the bid for today had separated out the timing as a bid alternate, which worked well. But there was only the one bid, and the other bid had to be rejected. So we're going to rebid the exact same specifications with the.
Was the bid that rejected potentially a viable bid if they had done their paperwork properly?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not something we can do internally.
To do
Whatever we're doing.
The closure.
The closure, or the DPW can't do this.
No. This is something that would have to be done by an outside contractor, and then part of it is an electrical company that will work with the traffic engineer at the time.
Okay.
So this goes out, and then when does it come back?
You'll be able to take action on this on July 15th.
The reason why, just for everybody that's understanding, the reason why we're trying to make this work, and I'm less than thrilled, is we wanted to get this well before the back to school craziness of everyone learning how to drive to new school. So that's why there's a little bit of
The new bid opening is set for July 10th or July 11th, Omar?
July 11th.
July 11th. So it will have the results.
Okay, keep pushing forward. Go ahead.
Okay, we have submitted for the DOT grant for fiscal year 25 with the intention of targeting, and this is the Borough Engineer's recommendation, West Clinton Avenue from River Edge Road to Tenafly Road. There's a item on the agenda for the mitigation of the internal water damage from the library roof.
Two questions. On the grant, is West Clinton one of the streets that PSE&G is working on? Or will they be working on West Clinton?
Well, this would be for the FY '25.
Oh, it would be after, right?
So, yeah, you would probably be constructing this probably 2 years from now.
Got it, okay. And then on the library, sorry, you were
Go ahead.
talking about, but I did have a question.
Go ahead.
I know one of the resolutions is about the mold damage.
Yes.
And I don't know if this will get into something that we need to talk about in closed session, but the mold damage obviously is not our fault. We're paying for it now. Are we going to recover that somehow? I mean, how does that?
Yeah, it probably is a
closed
discussion
session
for a closed session. But to answer your question, we are tracking all the expenses, not only the mold remediation, but the additional engineering that we had to put into this and so forth. And
all of that. Okay.
We'll work with the council and the borough attorney on how best to proceed. Just a note on the downtown improvements, you may have noticed there were a lot of flowers that have been planted. There's repainting on the poles and traffic lights, power washing of benches is ongoing. Our DPW is putting a lot of effort into it. On the old swim club, there were no bids received on the original bid date of June 13th. That project was re-advertised and the bid opening is this Thursday, June 27th. So we will have results of that on your July 15th meeting, hopefully for an award. To go along with that, we had the skate park equipment that was going to be a bid alternate on this, on the base bid that you could choose to award or not. Since then, we've engaged a couple of vendors as the original vendor identified under Sourcewell Spawn Ranch is not interested in a park that would be less than $300,000. So we have contacted some other vendors that are also on Sourcewell, and they've recommended a park design, and I emailed it to the council earlier tonight. Our director of recreation has done some good work with the vendor to get us to this point. But basically, it would be the equipment. It would be a very durable, is the most durable on the market that is not concrete. It has a 20-year warranty, has a steel framework and steel riding surface. So we would get more specifications for that for you for consideration. And the option would be that would be awarded concurrently with the base bid on July 15th, so that project stays online.
Question on that. So for the skate park bid section, and you just mentioned all the actual features, is the design part of that?
Yes. Yeah.
So we could redesign as needed.
Yes, so that's all part of the all-in price, and the target price on this design was about 80,000. So we expect that it would stay within that $100,000 item. And the reason I can talk about it is it's on Sourcewell, so it's not jeopardizing a bid scenario.
Can you share with the team the success of the Little League grant?
Yeah, I think I reported that at the last council meeting, but we did get the LRIG award from DCA for the Little League improvements for $67,000.
That's great news.
Colliers is working on how we're going to phase that, or proposal of phasing that design in as to what we can use that $67,000 for a certain phase of the improvements. And we're also waiting for the Bergen County Open Space Fund to see if we get awarded money for the Little League from that fund as well.
That's great tip.
And could you also, I don't want to cut you off, but could you also just let everyone know about what you told me with regards to the EV charging?
Yeah, so the EV charging is moving forward. Actually, the permits were issued and picked up on Thursday of last week. So Bob Burns did confirm that with me today. So we should be having some of the EV stations constructed over the summer. Probably all of their process should be done by the end of the year.
Anything else?
That's all.
So I have a question regarding the grant, the hyperlink to the USDA composting food waste reduction grant. I shot you an email about it today. I was just wondering if maybe I could, send some information, if this could possibly be something that we can qualify to supplement what we already have going with a lot of our residents, or maybe we could use that to open it up to schools, because it's a municipal, reduction. I was just hoping that I could explore that a little bit more to communicate that to our grant writer. Maybe they can either set me straight and say no, or, oh yeah, we've got something here. So what would my best way forward with that be?
What, I see that in 2022, the town of Newton, New Jersey was awarded a program, so we could take a look at what their request was and what they were funded and their success.
Okay.
Use
So
that
I'll
as a
just-
starting point.
I'll hear from you a little later.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're all set then?
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the consent agenda, non-consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions for any of the resolutions on the consent or the non-consent agenda? Good, Vinu,
So
you
yeah,
had your hand up
so
first.
two things. First of all, I want an opinion from Wendy about the non-consent agenda, about why, whether we are required through by Robert's rules or whatever to read each one separately. Otherwise, why not just bring the non-consent agenda into the consent agenda?
So I believe that, okay, great question. Mayor was going to suggest that later this evening. The original purpose of how this was set up was to bring comfort to the council when we moved away from work sessions.
Mhm.
So items that were not necessarily weekly on an agenda were separated into non-consent agenda resolutions. It is not a requirement. The definition for consent agenda is for resolutions that are not contentious in nature and can be approved in one motion. When resolutions are not on a consent agenda, however, they cannot be approved by one motion. So if the council would prefer, we can certainly move forward and put all resolutions on the consent agenda. And if somebody finds that there is an individual resolution within the consent agenda that you would like to have separate discussion, or you wanted to make a separate vote on, because perhaps you want to vote yes on one or abstain on or no on something else, we can just pull those and vote on them separately moving forward, but move them all into the consent agenda. Does that answer the question?
So that brings up a question of what we're going to do. I mean, are we still going to separate them out into consent agenda, non-consent agenda?
I would put a motion to put everything on the consent agenda and then by exception.
Right, so if everything is listed on the consent agenda ahead of time, if there's an item that needs separate consideration, you would pull it. The consent agenda would get voted on without that item, and then that item or items would get reviewed individually and voted on individually. In discussions with administration, we are thinking though of putting a separate resolution outside of consent on the bill list. That's how it's usually done. I know Tenafly is always incorporated in the consent agenda. However, I would recommend pulling that one out and voting the bill list as a standalone resolution on its own.
And why is that? What's the rationale?
It's just something to draw attention to separately. It's a very large amount of information that is included in there. And just for ease of review, I would recommend just setting it up separately on the agenda so that you can review it properly without having a whole list.
And the bill list is your last review, right? It's gone through all the requisition processes and approval processes and finance has certified the funds. This is the last opportunity before we actually send checks out for there to be any questions or any explanations that may be solicited.
Yeah, but so now in terms of discussions about transparency and deliberation of the council, I get that we end up we have the ability to pull out any item we want for further review. But where does the responsibility for something that is not a normal item get discussion?
Well, there are certain things that will never be in the consent agenda. For example, when you do your budget, that will never be in the consent agenda. That is always a standalone. There's certain resolutions that require public hearing for grant opportunities. Those have to be a standalone. Those will always be separate.
Why is that?
Because it requires a public hearing.
Okay.
So you have to have it separate too. It's treated almost like an ordinance, but
Like
it's
an
one
ordinance,
reading.
okay.
So there are situations that cannot be in the consent agenda. I don't want to give the impression that everything will always be, but those aren't always on an agenda.
Because, no, I mean, I'll go along with whatever the rest of the council suggests, but I think that we're getting rid of the work session, so there's no opportunity for discussion on things there. And if we start putting things into a consent agenda and just passing it en masse, we're actually cheating the public on the ability to discuss or for them to be aware of what things are coming out that are special, that are different from the everyday ordinary.
But everything's available for the public, right?
How many people in the public actually look at this or know that things are on?
Well, certainly I would recommend, you have a lot of procurements that are moving forward. There's a bit of a backlog. Those procurements were all approved during your budget process, and now it's moving forward. Those items, if nothing else, all of the procurements, I would suggest moving into consent agenda because you've all discussed it ad nauseum during your budget process.
And as long as there are no differences or changes, because for example, in the last meeting when we had, the different equipment that was bought and, they were bought under 2 or 3 different resolutions for the same item, where it was broken apart and, one resolution had to do with one, there were.
But just to confirm for myself, we are not allowed, or Susan's not allowed. The line always in the report is Susan has approved that this is within the budget and, has been, right? There's always that line.
And that wasn't always being followed in the past. That became something that she started signing regularly more recently. And that's a good thing, which is why
You're doing a better job at it.
But which is why at the last meeting I did ask whether Susan signed it, because there were some that seemed like they
But I
weren't
assume
signed.
nothing should come, I'm asking, nothing will come before the council that Susan hasn't approved.
You
Correct.
cannot
You
have
can't
a
assume.
resolution approving a contract that exceeds an appropriation that was made in the budget without a change to the budget.
Correct.
So, yes.
And what I had stated in the previous meeting is that Susan and Omar and I go over the agenda prior to the agenda being formulated. So nothing is going to get put onto the agenda that requires a certificate of availability funds without one being issued.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go one step more, because again, remember, we're the board of directors, right? We're not running the machine every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hope that Susan and Omar and David, if you guys believe it's something that you should bring to the council's attention, you have the authority, you should have the authority to put that into the non-consent agenda as well.
But having said that, the state is going to look at, or courts are going to look at who signed the resolution, which is all of us.
Yeah.
And that's why, we don't just rubber stamp, I don't think
whether
anybody.
it's in the consent or not consent, I read every single, I take notes and go to work.
Sure, but the point being that you may have that diligence. That doesn't mean that even not even talking about people on this council, there may be other members of other councils that don't necessarily. They just kind of go through it.
Can we assume, that's a good point, can we assume that we make it in some sort of consistent to your point about liability, that nothing makes it into this agenda unless it's been pre-approved by the
For spending.
Yes, certain things are spending, certain things are other things.
Your point is you could say it's 10,000, it shows up as 20, we're like, yeah, good, right. With 20 when it's not there, right? As we're outlining, there's a process. But do we have reasonable dependency upon that?
And just to refresh everyone's knowledge, you run a full encumbrance system. So, and that is set up, from an initiator and department head level and approvals and finally my approval and then Susan's approval in that process. So you're not overstepping, actually it's 4 now. So you're not overspending a budget line.
Right. That's
and that's what ultimately goes into your bill list. It doesn't require a resolution or a special
That's on the budgetary items, and I understand that there are a lot of controls along the way to make sure that it's being
Yes.
done. There are other things that get put on the, on resolutions that are not necessarily financial, that are conceptual or, whatever. And, so sometimes those things, without discussions at a work session, without, proper vetting and discussion at a meeting like this, I feel like you're shortchanging the public in a way that, you're not, because some of these things, you don't know what you don't know until a question is asked or discussion is had. It's not just a matter of you sitting. No. I'm saying you may not even know that a specific resolution was objectionable. You sitting in your own room reading them, and you may not have full knowledge of everything. Somebody says something, it triggers, discussion. That's the idea behind the work session. We don't have that. If we don't have something that fully discusses the special items, and I can agree with you putting in the budget items, that as long as they're the same things, I have no objection to that being part of the consent agenda.
Well,
But
I
there's
think that reduces about
in this case,
90% of the
in this case, there are
resolutions.
sometimes.
And last week.
Yeah,
Or
last week and this week. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I understand, but I'm saying we're looking at the totality, not.
So what I would recommend pulling out separately is something that either wasn't put on the agenda after discussion. For example, here you have something that's a little bit different with your wayfinding signage, but that has been discussed several times along the way. But something perhaps like, quite frankly, I would suggest when you have a resolution accepting grant funding, you should highlight that and put that separately and vote separately so that
The public is aware,
can be
so they can
when
be
you're accepting
happy.
it. Absolutely.
But that's a positive. I'm saying there should also be things for negative, meaning, where the public is made aware of things that are potentially negative that affect their lives.
Everything is on the website, correct? All the details,
Well,
right?
the agenda is posted.
With all the details.
Well, the hyperlinks, I don't.
The resolutions are available after the meeting, the
Yeah.
language.
Okay,
They're
right,
not-
fine.
They're not posted in advance. And certainly an ordinance is posted after introduction.
How
Sunny.
about to split the difference for just currently, if this idea is to shrink these resolutions by moving the ones that are budgetary into consent, maybe that's the first way to split the baby. What do you think?
Well, that's, I thought what I was saying, but thank you for clarifying.
No,
Pretty
but the
much
others.
everything is budgeted,
But
though.
meaning the others keep it out, outside
So
as a
we're
non-consent
keeping
agenda where we.
Non-consent is not budget.
How about we trust it to our executives to?
Well, we
Yeah,
do a
I'm
lot of
not sure.
trusting. I know we should be trusting our
not sure.
professionals, but I'll give you an example, and maybe somebody can tell me if I'm wrong. If you look at Resolution 282, am I reading this wrong? Is this a typo, or are we actually talking about $444,000?
What is?
It's the amendment of a prior resolution.
That's the last item on the consent agenda. Should that be 444 or should that be 44? And maybe.
Oh, no, that's a typo. That is totally a typo.
But we trust our professionals, right? This is exactly
Well,
my
we have
point.
to be able to trust people who work for us.
Yes, that is a typo.
No. You have to be able to trust and then kind of
Well,
look at it
and
with a
so here's
skeptical
the
eye.
thing,
That allows us to
There's
bring
not-
that forward. It's not.
Yeah, but
There's nothing
yeah,
that prevented you right now from saying, I'd like to get a clarification. Should that be
Right, that's
No,
why I
no,
asked
no,
that.
no, I
$444,000 or
understand, but what I'm saying is that you
$44,000?
don't just, completely trust the professionals and then just sign up.
Well,
You-
that's
you
why
gotta-
I asked the
you gotta go
question
through it.
about, does anyone have questions on specific resolutions?
Right, but I'm
Right.
just saying that.
In this particular resolution, obviously it's a scribber's error, but
Mhm, right.
it's reflective of the state local public
Of course,
contracts law.
right.
Yes.
So the $44,000 is
Yes.
your bid threshold, so we can't change that to
Right,
$444,000.
understood. But I'm just saying these, yeah, there may be something that's more, nefarious, and I'm not trying to, paint anybody with a brush, but, where they're doing it with, for some other reason, and
Well, quite frankly, I mean, I would expect everybody sitting at the dais to read it, their
And raise the
agenda
alarm.
packets.
Right.
Yeah, but you're not in full knowledge of everything. Sitting in your room, you're not in full knowledge of
Then
everything in your.
absolutely, at the meeting, when the mayor asks, does anyone have any questions on resolutions, you should absolutely
question.
ask that question, without doubt,
And I agree, and I
regardless
don't
of
want to beat
whether
a
it's on a
dead horse,
consent
but
agenda or not.
but my point is there are times when you won't know which questions to ask because you don't know that you haven't, you aren't aware of it, and that only comes up in discussion.
Well, if you're not aware of something, you should ask.
All right, we're going around in
Again,
circles. We're starting to go in circles.
I'm-
Okay.
So,
All right, so I'm going to start again. Does anybody have any questions about any items on the consent or non-consent agenda? Go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to ask about the benches. So this was resolution R24-289. And I was able to confirm, David, you said these are made of recycled
Yes,
plastic.
Mike Cassidy spoke with the vendor directly to reconfirm that, and it is, the source material is recycled plastic.
So my additional, and that's great. The additional question I had was, are these replacement benches of ones that are already falling apart, like we had some ones that were decrepit, or are these ones that are going to be in new locations? Because that was an area where I think we were still, there was a group that made a recommendation saying put them in a lot of places, but not 100% sure that, well, I don't believe we all signed on to putting them in those places.
Yeah,
I just
so
wanted to check what we're talking about.
the benches that would be ordered or have not been designated for a location. This is just getting the benches ordered, and I think it's like a 6 to 8 week process.
And so is it good to order them, to have them? Is this the type of thing, like I think I read in the PO that you get a discount when you order it in a bulk or some situation?
Yes, I think that there are, I think basically there's going to be an opportunity to place the 12 benches, whether they're going to be replacements or new locations of the council's choosing. There's going to be a need for the 12 benches. Some of the benches that looked like they were in disrepair needed to be power washed, and we're evaluating stuff after that. But basically the ones around Borough Hall here were in that category.
Okay, yes, they did look a little
Right.
fixed up.
Right.
So I was like, oh. So then, just as a follow-up, will when these come in, can this discussion come back onto the council agenda about where we're putting the benches, if we're all?
Yes.
Okay,
And
great.
then just on that same question with the benches, for example, the one that's right outside Borough Hall, it looks like slats were replaced by wooden. Maybe somebody internally did it, but whatever. It didn't seem like it was finished wood. It seemed like there was splinters that would be coming out. Those aren't the recycled plastic ones.
He said those were.
Yeah, these were power.
But they were
benches
just
that were
those were just power washed, because that one looked like it needed more than just a power wash.
Yeah, it was just power washed.
Okay.
As far as I know, I know we didn't purchase a new bench. I'll find out from Mike, but
I don't think, no, it seemed like it was the original sides, but the wood
I
may
think
have been,
with the power
the slats were
washing,
replaced.
Yeah, I'll find out from him if there were any new slots put in, but it was basically a power washing process.
And then the ones, if they were slats that were replaced, if we can make sure that they're finished wood, kind of, if they are wood, finished wood, where there aren't the splinters, coming off, because that one seemed like it had splinters or whatever. So just make them safe is my.
We'll take a look at it. It probably is the setting on the power washer that if they applied the high pressure.
It removed
water,
the finish too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll take a look at that.
Right.
All right,
Okay,
any other questions for the consent
Yeah,
agenda?
I have a few, I had two more.
All right, so let John go first, then back.
Just out of sheer curiosity, but simply don't understand it, I think we should. 24-301. This is a water subordination agreement.
So-
The town is involved somehow. How does it make sense?
Quite honestly, you shouldn't feel that you should understand it.
That's what I do.
This has not come up before this council before. You have, as part of your affordable housing program, a rehabilitation program, which provides low or no cost loans to income qualified property owners to make certain habitability repairs to their property. And so this couple that owns a property has such a mortgage to the borough for repayment of that loan. And they're taking a refinance on their house. So you have to approve the subordination agreement in order for the mortgage to be correct. Correct. We did confirm that there's enough equity in the home, though, that there would still be available funds.
And we've always had this available for any homeowner?
Yes, actually, there's been, I believe, 3 since your last court approval well, during this third round, and you were required to have 4, so this is good stuff.
Oh.
And if anyone needs it, there is a program online.
Julie, you have a question then?
Yeah, do we have the date of the Oktoberfest?
Not yet, we're down to those 4 dates that I shared with you. We're trying to see, I shared with the downtown committee. What we're trying to do is, we've had the events on Saturdays. We said, we like switching things up, and so we're trying to do it on Sunday, but then we ran into the blue law issues, which Wendy is looking at saying, that's wonderful, we don't have the problem, which would be awesome.
Well, no, so we did look into that in my office, and I believe that you are allowed to do it because the blue laws prohibit the normal course of business, but this wouldn't be the normal course of business, given that this is outside. And the
No, you can.
no, you can, because it's being outside the normal course of business.
Yeah.
Well, and they're going to be so they're going to be on tables. They're not going to be right. It's the businesses would need to be vendors on the sidewalk. It's not opening the normal course of business stores. Otherwise, then you would have to limit potentially what people are selling, and so long as what they're selling doesn't fall under that.
My personal preference would be Sunday to change it up, but let's see what the downtown says.
So keep in mind that historically, years and years ago, these events were Saturday and Sunday, so certainly there is precedent for having done it on Sunday.
Who had a question? All right, Vanu, then Dan. Hold on.
If only.
What?
People, we've had these conversations.
Okay, Vanu.
Number 284, for the purchase of a vehicle for the construction official. Am I wrong? Didn't we say that we wanted an electric vehicle?
During the budget process, there was a request to fund an additional $10,000 for the purchase of a vehicle that was turned down by the council to add money. So the vehicle that the building department could get for less than $40,000 is not an electric vehicle.
Okay. And then, 288 was a question about the library.
Can I build off that, Dave?
Sure.
For the next budget, can we get the list of vehicles from the state lists, so we at least have a guided price?
Yeah.
Right.
Vehicles that are on state contract, you mean?
Just as a guide, so we know.
Sure.
Other questions?
So the wayfind is, because he's volleying back and forth, so I'm going now. Resolution R 23-285, the wayfaring signs, wayfinding signs. Which ones are these? Is this the one?
They're in the office, they're the black and orange ones.
Oh,
The ones that have, is Elizabeth Case house to the right, municipal field to the left.
So I remember we talked about the sign at the top of East Clinton. Did that happen already?
Yes, those
Because
are
I
the
never
signs.
go up there.
They're not in yet, but those are exactly the signs that we're talking about. They're all in, and now they're putting the footings in.
So these ones are gonna go and tell people where the nature center is?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just gonna tell them that's gonna be like unrolled, rolled out.
They rolled it, yes. Hopefully, David, I don't know.
It's on the agenda tonight, so if this resolution gets adopted, I would expect that the work would be done sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Which would be awesome. And the thing that we have some additional money, I think, because the only thing I can guarantee you is someone is going to be upset about something that we missed, some thing to the left and right.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. And that's great because, we could do 5 more when we see it. So let's just see. The only
Just
thing
reporting it
guaranteed
back to
is that
Nature
someone's
Center.
going to be upset with something, which is
Okay.
okay. So that's how we
Next
work.
4 to 5 weeks. Okay.
Vanu, please.
And I'd like to have 294 pulled for a separate vote.
R24-294.
That's the October.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No? Okay. So could I have a motion, please, to approve resolutions?
Well, first, we need to amend the agenda and include them.
So could I get a motion to amend the agenda to pull the non-consent agenda resolutions into the consent agenda, please? Could I have a second? Second. Omar, call the roll, please.
Sure. Councilmember Corsair?
Yes.
Councilmember Menon?
Yes.
Councilmember Michaels?
Yes.
Councilmember Dr. O'Connor?
Yeah.
Councilmember Park? Councilmember Rolary?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, could I please have a motion to approve resolutions R24-274 through R24-293 and R24-295 through R24-301? Do I have a second?
Second.
Omar, please call the roll.
Councilmember Corsair?
Yes.
Councilmember Menon?
Yes.
Councilmember Michaels?
Yes.
Councilmember Dr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Rolary?
Yes.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve resolution R24-294, please?
So moved.
Could I get a second?
Second.
Omar, please call the roll.
Sure. Councilmember Corsair?
Yes.
Councilmember Menon?
No.
Councilmember Michaels?
Yes.
Councilmember Dr. O'Connor?
Yeah.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Rolary?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We're going to move on to public hearing. Ordinance 24-15 to amend police salaries. Omar, could you please read the confirmation of publication of the ordinance and the title of the ordinance?
Ordinance number 24-15. It was published in the June 16th edition of the record. Is an ordinance to amend ordinance number 24-11, the salary, wage, or compensation of the rank of police officers of the police department of the borough of Tenafly in the county of Bergen and state of New Jersey for the calendar years 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026.
I'd like to open the floor for public comments on ordinance 24-15 only. Would anyone like to speak on that? Omar, it doesn't look like there's anyone in the chambers.
I see no hands, Mayor.
Is there anyone online at all whose hands are up right now?
No hands, Mayor.
Okay, we're going to close public comments on this ordinance. Councilwoman Corsair, would you like to make a motion, please?
Pass and adopt on second and final reading, ordinance 24-15, and that notice of same shall be published in the
Could I have a second, please? Omar, could you please conduct a roll call?
Councilmember Corsair?
Yes.
Councilmember Menon?
Yes.
Councilmember Michaels?
Yes.
Councilmember Dr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Rolary?
Yes.
All right, very good. We're going to move on to the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of June 11th, 2024 Mayor and Council meeting? Could I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, I accidentally skipped old business. Does anyone have any old business? Go ahead, please.
Medical director's insurance, where are we on that?
Very timely.
Yeah, Brian Eifert had sent Dr. Chertoff a link several weeks ago, so he needs to go on to that and accept it, and we can do it. As I told the mayor, Brian is going to be here tomorrow for unrelated topic, so I'll bring this up to him and ask him to call Dr. Chertoff and have him walk him through it. If it's a matter of the paying and the premium, we just need to move the process forward.
And I also had a communication with JP this evening around 7 o'clock or so. and asked him to remind the doctor to speak to Eifert, and so he said he was going to do that. Okay. All right. For the good of the order, garbage placements and collections, Councilwoman Dr. O'Connor.
Yes, so this issue has to do, I don't know if I want to mention a specific property, but I mean, it's not like it's a
What's the concept?
secret. It's, there's property that has stores, and because it's a private lot, our DPW had garbage cans placed there, stopped servicing them because it is not the job of our town to do that garbage collection. The store has their own garbage collection contract. But now we're left with no garbage collection, and so people are littering. So it's.
Sorry, the receptacles are no longer there?
The receptacles are no longer there because DPW doesn't do it. The landlord, if you will, I guess, just says, well, hey, I pay for the garbage for my back dumpsters, and I don't really need to provide a receptacle in the front. And so I don't know if this is something we need to address as an ordinance. Maybe it's something they're not in compliance, but if they're serving food and they're serving takeaway materials and stuff, we're really having a big littering problem.
And
Go ahead.
we've asked them and they've said, go fly height.
I don't think the town necessarily has asked, but they know that the garbage cans got taken away, and their answer is, well, we don't have to provide garbage cans.
Is the littering happening on private property?
Yes.
And it's a food establishment?
Yes.
So let's send the health inspector over and start with that to find out what's going on. Because if it creates vermin and bugs and rats. Okay, Julie? Yeah.
But I think it's, to her point, I think it's maybe of a little bit larger of an idea of, okay, like we require places to have these kind of back dumpsters, and we've done garbage ordinances about the back and keeping them covered. But I don't know that we're requiring garbage cans for customers.
Strip centers.
Well,
Yeah.
so that's a question when the
That's
property, we received approvals from the planning board, we have to look at the developer's agreement, right?
Yes.
So that we'll do all that.
That's what you had
Right.
thought of.
Yeah.
So what should
Go to
I
that,
do in the meeting? Yeah, she had thought of that, about looking back at the planning board.
Okay.
So what if they're not required?
So how about we do this? Let's find out first.
Okay.
Then we deal with what happens next. And in the meanwhile, we'll have the health department check out if we've got a health problem over there. Right? Because it's all about food. We can't have that going on.
Okay.
Okay? So for the next council meeting, hopefully we'll have the developers' agreements have been looked at, that we'll have an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for bringing it up. Okay, any upcoming meetings, what?
I do have something as well that I just wanted to give an update on.
Go ahead.
So I I'm not sure if I mentioned it or not, but I know that Councilwoman Corsair had mentioned a desire months ago to look at the sign ordinance for more of a color scope consistency view for the downtown zoning areas. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the council and really ask for approval to move forward with a overall look at the sign ordinance because of some recent case law about content neutrality and signage. And there's certainly revisions that need to be made to your sign ordinance overall in order to be in compliance with these recent cases nationwide, really. So what I would like is to be able to receive the approval to speak with David Novak, your planner, in order to do a review of the sign ordinance along with the colors, consistency, and awnings, and looking at that area, but looking at how terms are defined for signage in order to be consistent with First Amendment rights.
Questions from anyone? Everyone good with that?
I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wendy?
Go ahead,
What
Wendy.
about on the library discussion?
For tonight.
Or do you have it scheduled for something?
I don't have the information to be able to discuss anything yet.
All right, then maybe the next one.
Yep.
Okay, upcoming meetings. Upcoming meetings, any no comment, all right, okay. Obviously, we pulled the introduction of the ordinance next, so I'll make a deal. I will give up my mayor's remarks tonight if we skip committee remarks in the interest of time, unless someone has anything that is absolutely essential. Okay? So you could tell us about it. That is important.
Josette Norris went to Tenafly, it's one of the team ran, it's running Thursday night in the 1500 meters and ran the other night as well. Very rare.
She's running Thursday night.
Thursday night around 10 o'clock.
Excellent. Excellent. That's fabulous. Okay. Could you please read the closed session language?
Yes, it's Resolution R24-302 at a meeting of the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Tenafly, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, held on June 25th, 2024. Be it resolved in compliance with NJSA 10:4-12, the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Tenafly are going into closed executive session to discuss the following matters: collective bargaining, OPEIU update, real property, potential property acquisitions, and personnel, non-exempt statutory employees. Minutes will be taken of the meeting and released to the public at the time that the matter is resolved.
Can I get a motion to go into close, please? Have a second? All in favor? Any opposed?